There's one script and a skill that all of us real estate agents must master, and that is the art of storytelling. So if you've been following along in the last couple of videos that I've done, you've seen me challenging you real estate agents to be able to explain this market. And we talked about in the How to Get Listings foundational video number one, which was I gave you these skill sets and I said, all right, how do you explain the problem in the market? And if you can explain the problem better than what the average person even understands, they will give you a baseline level of trust and respect. So then I said, hey, here's some skill sets for you to play around with. And I said, think about analogies, think about stories, think about what statistics make sense, and get out there and test, 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 right? Then I came to another video where I shared with you, hey, here's what to do on social media today. And I said, make this post, ask this question, and then tell a story about a buyer example that you have. Tell a story about a seller example that you have. And inside the story, the client will learn the lesson. And I thought, this is going to be really good and it's going to produce a lot of great results. And so what's happened all week long is I've been talking to my coaching clients about storytelling. And I would say, tell me an example of a story about a buyer that you had. And I'm getting varying degrees of agents' ability to kind of project this story. So in this video, let's break down some of the skills to be able to tell a better story and what it's going to take for us to be able to have buyers and sellers to really understand what's going on with this market. So let's dive into how to tell better stories to explain the market. Now, it starts with this. The bottom line is, if we look in the last 5 years and you went into the business book section or the professional development section in, we don't have Barnes and Noble anymore, but you get the picture. But if you went on to Amazon and you went in, business books, and then you went into communication strategies to improve my communication skill sets in the area of business, in the area of maybe sales or influence or persuasion, you would see a common thread. And the common thread would be learn how to tell stories. And you would see at the top of the bestsellers, you'd see multiple different people, authors saying, here's how to tell better stories. Here's how to tell a better story of your brand. Here's how to tell a better story to influence, so on and so forth. So we know that this strategy, this tactic, this communication tool works really well. I don't have to explain that to you. But what I'm noticing in agents marketing and or in agents communication, I'm noticing something super interesting. So this is how this goes. If you and I were in the same office together, and I'm here at the Keller Williams office in San Diego, and I went over and I went to get some water and I ran into one of my good buddies who I knew was a top agent. What we would do is we would swap stories. I'd say, hey, Sean, let me tell you about this buyer deal that just completely blew up. Let me tell you this dramatic story. This is what happened. This is what the agent did. This is what we did. This is what they did. This is how this went. Blah, 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 blah. And I'd tell this huge dramatic story. And then you'd go, oh yeah? Well, I've got this story. Let me tell you about this. I had this listing and this is what happened. And then I did this and then they negotiated that. And the agent did this and the seller did this. And I, did this with the seller and the blah, 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 blah. This is what we've been doing, guys. We in the industry have been swapping our stories with each other in the industry. And all of us are like, oh my gosh, the market is insane, because we're hearing the stories from each other about how difficult it is to get buyers and acceptance, and how crazy these offers are coming in on our listings, and how fast and aggressive these offers are coming in on our listings and the intense amount of demand on these listings, we're swapping stories with each other, which is how we're learning. And then when we go to explain to the public, what do? Well, let me tell you about the stat, that the inventory is up by 50%. And, the price points have gone up by 10%. And then, the market is hot, hot, hot. The market's hot. Prices are way up. You should sell. Here's why you should sell now. Can you see that there's a problem here? The problem is what we're doing and communicating with each other inside the industry is telling great stories and entertaining each other, but also learning all the lessons. And then when we go to communicate with the public, we're telling them stats and weird salesy stuff. So here's my request. My request is, let's up our game with our storytelling skills. Okay, so here's your assignment. Your assignment is to figure out what is your absolute best buyer story. What's the best buyer story that inside of that story would help a buyer to understand what it's going to take in terms of grit, what it's going to take in terms of, how they're going to have to go the extra mile to get the really good property, what it's going to take for them to be emotionally resilient in this challenging environment. And then what it's going to take for you in terms of the hustle, in terms of skills, in terms of guidance, in terms of, your personal grit as a real estate agent to help them to secure this property. What is your story that accurately portrays the real reality of a buyer's journey today? That's number one. The same thing for the seller. What is your best story where you literally got, $100,000 over list price? You popped a bottle of champagne at the seller's house and you guys poured champagne and you guys were cheersing. It was so amazing. And then the appraisal came in $100,000 below list price. And then you had to now go in and fight with the buyer's agent because they said that they weren't worried about the appraisal, but now they were, and now they backed out. And then you had to go back and renegotiate and call all of the 10 offers, and most of them were pissed off at you, but you found the one that was willing to come in, and then you brought them in, and then that deal fell apart because they found another property and got an accepted offer which they didn't think that they were going to get, but they got it in the last minute. And then you had to go get another buyer and pull this thing together. And you had to come to some agreement around, the appraisal and the condition of the property with the intensity of the market. And then you put the deal together. Isn't that really a little bit more reality today? Is the intensity, the drama, the grit, the expertise on your part, the resilience, the opportunity of a lifetime, the amount of liquidity that is in the marketplace, right? The aggressive nature of some of the buyers, the aggressive nature of what's going on our side as real estate agents. Tell the story. Practice your story. So let's talk about some skills in storytelling, okay? Skills in storytelling, if we read, any one of the 5 or 6 books that are at the top of the shelf right now, there's one thing that I want to make sure I point out. Big shout out to Donald Miller of Building a Story Brand. Donald Miller, this book, Building a Story Brand, if you haven't read it yet, guys, please get on that. I mean, only every single person has recommended that book. So if you haven't bought that book, listen to the audio, get on that immediately, okay? And I'm shout out to Donald Miller and his cohort, J.J. Peterson. They wrote a fantastic second book called Marketing Made Simple. So just an aside bonus there. Get both books. But in the book, Building a Story Brand, Donald Miller says, hey guys, here's the framework for telling stories that work amazingly. If you follow the framework, this is what all of the most successful movies and books in the history of books, in the history of movies, they follow the same framework. And when you see that framework, you're like, oh my gosh, you're right. It is everything out there, right? And it's really interesting to see. Okay. But in the process, he says, for business owners and for entrepreneurs, he said, you business owner, you entrepreneur, you are not the hero. The client is the hero and you are the guide. See, skill number one is you're not the hero. Your buyer's the hero. Your seller's the hero. You're the guide. This is a critical piece to this puzzle because when I've asked a bunch of my agents, tell me the story about that, they start making it more about me, and this is what I did. And I'm like, well, what did your customers say? How did they respond? What was their response to this? And they're like, well, and so I need you to practice the skill where you say, and when I got the call from the listing agent, and we were competing against 10 offers, and I wrote an offer that was $75,000 over the list price, and we pulled all the strings, and I did everything in my power to let that listing agent know that my buyers absolutely love this neighborhood, they love this property, they were going to do whatever it takes, and I was going to do whatever it takes to help them secure this property over the competition. And there's the phone call from the listing agent. And when that listing agent said, congratulations, I've accepted your offer, right? That's one of the skills. And then I was so excited, then I called my buyer and I said, congratulations, you accepted the offer. And my buyer broke down in tears, and what they said to me was, that's the skill. You see what I just did? I just told you a little bit of a story. I reenacted it. I got the listing agent and I spoke in the voice of the listing agent, and then I spoke in the voice of the buyer, and the buyer is the hero. I just was the guide. And so this is a storytelling skill. Okay? So major point number one, you're not the hero, the client is. And let them tell some of the most important things. Now, there's a second skill, number two, because again, the purpose of these stories, so some of you are probably asking me, Patrick, what's the purpose of the story? If you've lasted this long in this video, right? The purpose of the story is to teach the most important lessons inside of the story. So you want to tell, a buyer's journey, and you want to tell them how they grit through the challenge of this, how their heart was broken a couple times, but they still maintained hope. Right? How they had to rationalize, writing an offer over list price, how they had to pull in some additional funds and bring this available. Tell some of the advice that that you're going to give, that they're going to have to do. Put that advice inside of the story, spoken from the buyer, from the customer to the future customer. See, great storytellers, this is what they do, right? It's not about Patrick Ferry giving you advice. I'm like, look, some of my most successful agents, this is what they tell agents to do. Da, 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 da. See, that's what they say, not me, right? They're the ones telling you guys that you need to tell better stories. See, I remember this client was saying, man, when I told this story to one of my clients, they got everything that they needed to get, so that when I helped them to write their offer, they wrote an offer and we got it accepted because they followed my advice based upon what I told them in the story. See, this is the skill set, my friends, that we really need to develop right now, okay, on the listing side and on the buyer side, okay? One advanced skill, number three, with storytelling, which is be more dramatic about it, right? I reenact drama. Listen, I am not an actor. I have never taken any acting classes or anything like that. But I know if I want to entertain you guys, I got to bring some drama into the equation. And so it's important that you do that. And let's just be honest. There's so much drama right now in the marketplace with buyers and sellers that if you can't figure out how to, with integrity, share some of the emotion of what's going on with buyers and sellers in this crazy market. If you can't figure out, I mean, you're kind of cold-hearted. I'm just going to tell you right up front, okay? Because it's intense, right? And people are feeling a lot of emotion, and I know you are too. So I'll give you permission. Go ahead and express some emotion in this process. Really helpful, okay? Now, last thing in the skill set, I'd say skill number 4 is if you really started to get good at storytelling, you'd start at the peak high moment, the dramatic moment of the story, and then you would work your way back from the beginning and tell all the lessons in the process that got you to the winning moment or that peak moment, okay? So start all the way back and come up. If you look at, at some of the best movies, I just watched that movie where it was like the woman was in the box that was chained and there was water and she's like trying to get out and freaking out. And then the next scene is 6 months before. And then she's walking down the street in her suit, right? And then it tells the whole story up to that dramatic moment. So that's an advanced skill. But I want for some of you to just get better at telling stories. We need to stop swapping stories at the water cooler in your office and stop telling stats to our customers and start telling stories more effectively so that buyers and sellers go, oh, that's how this works. When we're telling case studies and examples of the families that we're helping every single day and the challenges and the struggles and the emotions and the ups and the downs and the highs and the lows, all of the stuff that it takes right now to be able to secure homeowners and buyers in this challenging market, it's dramatic. And if you're doing it consistently, then you are one of the good ones and you've got lots of great stories to tell. So craft the art of the storytelling with the buyer and the seller, layer in all the principles, and get out there and share, share, share. I hope this was helpful.